Bardell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I too congratulate the Honourable Lady for Lewisham West and Penge on this excellent debate. Sadly, it's not more broadly attended, but it is an important topic, and as a Member of Parliament who's to spend anywhere between 10 and 15 hours a week travelling to and from my constituency, I am grateful to hear of the great experiences that others have who travel a shorter distance. But members have made important contributions, and the late and very much missed Joe Cox said, we in Westminster are behind the curve compared with working practice of much of industry and in the charitable and public sectors, and that is a problem. If we act differently and change the culture and working practices here, we can change how others operate. We should do that because we are here to change and improve the United Kingdom. Madam Deputy Speaker, I couldn't agree more, because the reality is, if we are going to make laws and policies that are forward-thinking and progressive, we must get our own house in order. And frankly, when I came to this place, I couldn't help thinking it was a cross between Downton Abbey and Hogwarts. And I know people have a great affection for the Houses of Parliament. There is nonetheless no doubt that it is a place stuck in the past and stuck with steeped in great history, but not forward-looking enough. And it does have a rich history of failing to be a workplace that's anywhere near as functional or inclusive as it should be. And the previous member, the Honourable Member for Bristol North West, spoke about pubs in Parliament and his shock and surprise when he arrived here to see how many pubs there were. And I have to say I shared that. The only place I have ever worked, in the many places I've worked, from the corporate industry, the energy sector, other MPs' offices, foreign governments, was when I worked in the media. And I started at Good Morning Television the year after the last pub in the building had been closed, and that was for a very good reason. And the reality is that when people come to visit us here in our workplace, when we bring constituents into this place, the fact that they can go to many different pubs and that there are many different places that they can get alcohol, and the alcohol is served during the day at receptions, to me is still somewhat of a mystery. Nonetheless, progress has been made, and when we brought about proxy voting, I think we all drew a sigh of relief. And it's been interesting to hear some of my male colleagues who have either recently had babies, partners have had babies, or are about to have them, who've missed out on the proxy voting and who will benefit from it. And one of my honourable friends, the member for Glasgow North East, has just brought forward a proposal for extended parental leave for those who have premature babies. And I think that that is a very sensible proposal, and I hope that the right honourable gentleman, the Minister, will consider that. Because Dame Laura Cox's report in October last year concluded that a culture of deference, subservience, acquiescence and silence was enabling abuses of power and mistreatment of colleagues to go unchecked. And it should not have taken one of our colleagues to have to come in here the day she was due to give birth in a wheelchair to, for proxy voting to be forced. She was incredibly brave in what she did. She stood by her principles, and it is because of her that we have finally made that final step forward. And we have heard of many stories of an endemic culture of normalisation of bullying and harassment, and that does continue to permeate our politics. That is a sad reality, Madam Deputy Speaker, of decades and centuries of ancient tradition in this place. And I know that we have plans for refurbishment of this place. Some predictions have it between £4 billion and £6 billion of taxpayers' money just to bring this place and the other place up to standard. The Scottish Parliament, which is going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary shortly, cost a little under £500 million. You could build between 8 and 10 Scottish Parliaments for the cost of the refurbishments of this place. So, there is an argument, and there are some people that believe perhaps this place would be better being turned into a museum. And in fact, we could build a new Parliament in another part of the UK.
I didn't want to stop the Honourable Lady's flow, but she referred back to the Cox report and the grievance procedures, and I hope she will have noted that we've secured a short debate on the floor of the House next Tuesday to press on progress in those areas, and I hope she'll be able to support that debate.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her intervention, and I was coming on to that. She's read my mind. I am glad to see that amongst the threadbare business for next week, that there is going to be an update on that. That is an important piece of work, and it is very important that we move that forward. And the Right Honourable Lady for Basingstoke has done some very important work, as has her committee, and I commend her on that work. And she said, you know, Brexit as a process has challenged people's trust in politics and in this place. And I would agree with that. I would go further. I would say it's exposed the crumbling relic of a democratic institution that this place is. And if we are going to get the confidence of people, and we are facing the prospect of a Prime Minister who wants to a candidate who wants to be Prime Minister, who wants to prorogue Parliament, who wants a no-deal Brexit that will have a devastating impact, how are we going to get trust from the public if we can't even have proper business and proper legislation in this place? And another member talked about the built environment and the paintings around this place. And I've had the good fortune to sit on the Speaker's Works of Art Committee. That's been a privilege, particularly seeing the work that's been done on the Women 209 project. And I just want to commend all of those involved in that project. But actually, during that period, what I learned was that 25 times more money had been spent over the last 20 years on buying pictures of men for this place than had been bought buying pictures for women. And let's not forget that the women who took part, the female parliamentarians who took part in the Women 209 project, their photographs were taken by female photographers who were not paid. You know, and that is a really important point. And we must remember that when we are trying to support women and support their work, that they should be properly recognised. And without radical changes to this place, to make it more inclusive, we are not going to properly reflect society. And we have made significant strides. We're now the gayest parliament in the world, I believe, or one of the gayest parliaments in the world, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm proud to be a woman who is gay in this place. And when I stood for election and for selection, I stood against 4 men, and I did look at the lineup and think, you know, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to go up against, you know, 4 other men to a place that's very male-dominated? And I did it because I wanted to be part of the change that I know many young women can't see. And in Scotland, we've also made significant strides. We had the gender-balanced cabinet. When Nicola Sturgeon became First Minister, she was one of only a handful of leaders in the world to do that. And it's really important that we have politicians who are hard-working, relatable, and can bring their own personal experiences to this place. And we have seen that in the most recent election. Members across this House with a vast array of life experiences. But we have to make sure that not just in the Parliament and its elected representatives, but also in our media. I often look up at the benches in the press who are looking down at us, and I do not see many female faces. I do not see many people of colour, and that is a really important point, that we have people who are reporting on our politics who are as diverse as possible. And we've had contributions from members who've spoken about access to this place. If this building was being built today from scratch, there is absolutely no way it would pass health and safety standards. And the Honourable Lady for Lewisham and West Penge talked about the voting system. You know, and we've got proxy voting. Electronic voting is something that would save us a huge amount of time. At the last count that I did, which was in March, I calculated that we had spent 205 hours, 5.5 working weeks, just voting. Now, given that Parliament only sits 35, 36 weeks of the year, that is a huge amount of time being wasted just voting. Now, nobody's arguing that we shouldn't be here, that we shouldn't be debating, that we shouldn't be voting. That's an extremely important part. But as the Right Honourable Lady opposite said, you know, having perhaps an allotted time for urgent questions, having predictability in our business, particularly when we have people travelling from our constituency, from businesses, from other organisations to come and see us in Parliament, having to cancel meetings at the last minute, not being able to get back for children's events, for caring responsibilities, is a ridiculous situation. There is no other employment anywhere, and we do our constituents an injustice, and we are not able, in my view, to properly represent them and represent their issues when there is such a lack of predictability and such a lack of progress and activity from a legislative perspective. Brexit has dominated so much of the legislative timetable. It has created and exposed, I think, the inadequacies of this system. And I understand people like to have a wee chat and a banter in the voting lobbies, but for goodness sake, we live in a modern world. We should be able to have those meetings and engage with each other. And I think that just exposes the inability and inaccessibility of government and the ability to get answers from government, that people need to feel they need to use the time in the voting lobbies just to corner people because they cannot get the proper responses and meetings and time that they feel they need to. I'm happy to give way.
I thank her for giving way. I just wanted to use this opportunity really to draw to her attention and other members present here today that we have a fantastic opportunity with the Northern Estate programme, where we are going to be building a, I think, badly named temporary chamber. We're going to be building a chamber which could in fact be permanent, which, if we can't get reform here, which frankly is quite difficult to do because there's a certain amount of inertia, we should at the very least make sure that for that temporary chamber, which we will be sitting in from about 2025 onwards, that these issues are at the very least tested, so that if they are successful, they can be reintroduced here when we come back to a new Palace of Westminster in 2031 or thereabouts.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point, and I think it's an important one. However, what I would say is that if I am still here in 2031 and Scotland is not an independent country, I will eat my hat, quite literally. The thought that I would still be having to come to this place horrifies me, quite frankly. But I think the fact that we do not have a seat for every member, that we can only fit, so people make this argument, and I've heard it many, many times, oh, we need to vote, we need to queue up and vote in the lobbies because people need to be here for the debate. Yet we can only fit half of the members of this place into this chamber to actually listen to a debate. So, for goodness sake, it's common sense. Let's have a parliament. I know of so few parliaments, and I have been in parliaments all over the world, including Malawi at the beginning of last year, who don't have electronic voting. The European Parliament has it, the Council of Europe has it, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, the Northern Ireland Assembly. It's not difficult, so for goodness sake, let's just get on and do it. And another point that the Honourable Member for Birmingham Yardley made in a recent speech was about half-terms and summer breaks, and she referred also to experiences in Scotland. So in other parts of England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the recesses don't even match up with the holidays. I've got colleagues who sometimes less than 10 days of an overlap, so can't even get a break with their children, with their families. And I am in no doubt, we have a huge amount of privilege being in this place. And this is not about having a rant and a moan. It is about saying to our constituents, look, we could do a much better job for you and a much better job by you, and more people, women, people from across the social spectrum and the economic spectrum could be encouraged into this place if it had a proper, modern working ethic. And I just want to finish, Madam Deputy Speaker, reflecting on the experiences of some of my own staff, many of whom have been with me since I was elected. About the end of 2015, we started an all-party group on deaths abroad and consular services because we had 2 constituents, women who had been killed abroad in suspicious circumstances. Since then, we've taken evidence from about 60 families across the UK who have lost loved ones abroad. That has been a harrowing and deeply distressing experience for myself and my staff who have done that. Nothing like the experience that those families have had, but nonetheless, the vicarious trauma that my staff and I have experienced has been significant. And we have worked with the parliamentary authorities to get the right emotional support. And what's become very clear to me is there isn't appropriate emotional support for staff members, who all of our staff members do an incredible job, and they have to deal very often with distressing and difficult constituency work. And I think we must do much more through IPSA and through the authorities to make sure that our staff get the proper support when they come to work for an MP, because we are all individual employers and we have a very important responsibility to our staff and to make sure that they are properly protected. They will only be able to serve our constituents properly if they get the right support, and this place will only be a modern parliament that can properly reflect all parts of the UK and all people who live in it if we can make it a modern and sensible working place.